The strategic shift. How China's BYD outmaneuvered European tariffs through Turkey. In the complex chess game of international trade, few moves have been as surprising or as strategically brilliant as what unfolded between Turkey, China, and the European Union in recent months. What appeared to be a sudden reversal of policy has revealed itself as a masterclass in economic diplomacy, with implications that could reshape the global automotive landscape for decades to come. Just weeks ago, as Brussels deliberated over punitive measures against Chinese electric vehicle manufacturers, Turkey shocked observers by implementing one of the harshest import restrictions in the automotive world. The announcement sent ripples through the industry. A staggering 40% tariff would be slapped on every Chinese-made vehicle entering Turkish territory. But that wasn't all. The policy included a minimum duty floor of $7,000 per vehicle, meaning that regardless of the calculated tariff, importers would pay no less than this baseline amount. For Chinese automotive giants who had been steadily building market presence in Turkey, this represented nothing short of an existential crisis. Years of relationship building, marketing investments, and supply chain development seemed destined to evaporate overnight. Industry analysts predicted a complete withdrawal of Chinese brands from the Turkish market. Yet within 30 days, the entire narrative flipped on its head. Not only did Turkey withdraw these restrictions, but Ankara announced a landmark $1 billion partnership with BYD, China's most formidable electric vehicle manufacturer. The agreement outlined ambitious plans. BYD would construct a massive automotive manufacturing complex on Turkish soil, with production targets set at 150,000 vehicles annually. Industry veterans immediately recognized what had transpired. This wasn't simply a policy reversal. It was a carefully orchestrated strategy that would allow Chinese manufacturers to sidestep European Union trade barriers entirely. The question that emerged was both simple and profound. What prompted Turkey's dramatic about-face, and how might this arrangement fundamentally undermine the protective measures Europe hoped would shield its automotive sector? Before we dive deeper into this geopolitical maneuvering, I invite you to subscribe to our channel. We bring you in-depth analysis of the forces shaping our economic future, and your subscription ensures you won't miss our upcoming investigations. The unlikely rise of China's automotive empire. To understand the magnitude of what's happening today, we need to rewind the clock more than a century. When automobiles first transformed from curiosity to necessity in the early 1900s, two nations dominated the landscape: the United States and Germany. These industrial powerhouses didn't just manufacture vehicles, they invented the very concept of mass automotive production, establishing technical standards and manufacturing processes that would define the industry for generations. By the 1970s, a new challenger emerged from the East. Japan's automotive sector, leveraging exceptional engineering focused on fuel economy and legendary reliability, began capturing market share with remarkable speed. For nearly 50 years following this breakthrough, Japanese manufacturers maintained an iron grip on global sales, becoming synonymous with quality and efficiency in the minds of consumers worldwide. During this same period, China's relationship with the automotive industry was fundamentally different. Serious development didn't commence until the 1980s, and even then, progress came primarily through partnerships with foreign corporations who provided technology and expertise in exchange for access to China's vast potential market. The statistics from that era tell a stark story. In 1985, Japanese factories produced an astounding 11.04 million automobiles. Of these, approximately 1 million were manufactured overseas, while 6.85 million were shipped to foreign markets. Japan stood unchallenged as the world's automotive superpower. China's numbers that same year couldn't have been more different. Total production barely reached 440,000 vehicles. Imports accounted for roughly 100,000 units, while exports were so negligible they represented less than 1% of total output. Quality concerns plagued Chinese manufacturers, and in international markets, Chinese vehicles sometimes earned the unfortunate nickname industrial garbage. products that foreign consumers actively avoided. Few observers in the 1980s could have predicted what would happen next. China was about to embark on a technological leap that would not only close the gap, but eventually position it to lead the next automotive revolution. As the 21st century dawned, a new urgency gripped the international community. Global warming, which some had once dismissed as distant speculation, had become an undeniable reality, backed by overwhelming scientific consensus. Nations worldwide recognized that reducing carbon emissions wasn't merely advisable, it was imperative for human civilization's continued prosperity. China's leadership, seeing an opportunity, perceived an opening. While traditional combustion engine technology was still dominated by established players with decades of refinement, electric vehicle technology represented relatively uncharted territory. For perhaps the first time in automotive history, the playing field was level. Beijing made a calculated decision to pour resources into this emerging sector. Government support flowed to domestic manufacturers, helping them acquire technical capabilities and develop infrastructure. Subsidies encouraged consumer adoption. Regulations pushed the industry toward electrification with increasing urgency. The strategy was comprehensive, coordinated, and executed with long-term vision. The results of this sustained investment have been nothing short of remarkable. According to the China Association of Automobile Manufacturers, the country's total vehicle production and sales in 2023 reached 30 million units, a figure that represents extraordinary scale. Within that total, new energy vehicles accounted for 9.6 million units, demonstrating just how completely electrification has penetrated China's automotive sector. Export performance has been particularly striking. In 2023 alone, China shipped 4.91 million vehicles to foreign markets, with new energy vehicles comprising 1.2 million of that total, representing a year-over-year surge of 57.9%. These vehicles found homes primarily in European, Southeast Asian, and South American markets, cementing China's position as the world's largest automotive exporter. This achievement marks one of the most dramatic industrial transformations in modern economic history. A nation whose vehicles were once dismissed as inferior has become the dominant force in the industry's most dynamic and future-oriented segment. Success in domestic and export markets represented only the first phase of China's automotive ambitions. The next step involves something more permanent: establishing manufacturing presence on foreign soil, directly within target markets. In 2021, Chinese companies announced a 523-acre battery component facility in Michigan, demonstrating a willingness to invest even in the challenging United States market. That same year, Guoxuan High-Tech acquired assets from Bosch, the German automotive components giant, converting them into new energy battery production facilities, a symbolic victory that saw Chinese firms taking control of infrastructure in Germany's industrial heartland. By 2024, the pace accelerated further. Major manufacturers, including Great Wall Motors, SAIC Group, and BYD, all announced plans to establish production bases throughout Thailand, recognizing Southeast Asia's strategic importance as both a market and manufacturing hub. But the crown jewel of Chinese automotive expansion ambitions remained Europe, the world's most sophisticated and demanding automotive market, home to legendary brands that had defined luxury and performance for a century. Cracking this market wouldn't just mean commercial success. It would represent ultimate validation of Chinese manufacturers' technical capabilities and brand prestige. BYD's announcement of a $1 billion investment to construct a manufacturing and research facility in Turkey must be understood within this context. This wasn't merely a factory, it was a strategic foothold designed to overcome the most significant obstacle facing Chinese manufacturers' European trade barriers. BYD's planned facility, located in Manisa province in western Turkey, represents a carefully calibrated investment. Construction is scheduled to begin in late 2024, with production commencing by late 2026. When fully operational, the complex will employ more than 5,000 workers directly, with an additional 2,000 jobs created indirectly through supply chains and related services. The negotiations that produced this agreement began months earlier, in May of that year. Turkish officials didn't speak with BYD alone. Discussions included Chery, SAIC Group, Great Wall Motors, and other major Chinese manufacturers. Ankara clearly understood the stakes and pursued these partnerships with determination. When BYD and Turkey's Ministry of Industry and Technology formally signed the agreement in July, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan personally attended the ceremony, an unmistakable signal of how seriously Turkish leadership valued this partnership. For a head of state to personally participate in a corporate agreement indicates that this transcends normal commercial arrangements. It represents strategic national interest. From Turkey's perspective, the logic is straightforward. With a population of 85 million but an unemployment rate hovering around 10%, the nation desperately needs job creation. Chinese automotive investment offers exactly that, along with technology transfer, infrastructure development, and integration into global supply chains. Analysts project that once operational, BYD's Turkish facility will generate approximately $500 million in annual revenue for the Turkish economy. But Turkey's attractiveness extends beyond its own borders. Data shows that in 2023, Turkey imported more than 1.2 million vehicles. Chinese brands, including BYD, MG, and Chery, sold approximately 380,000 units that year, capturing 14% of the Turkish market. By mid-2024, that share had climbed to 18%. Clearly, Turkey itself represents a valuable market for Chinese manufacturers. Yet the real prize lies elsewhere, in a technical arrangement that makes Turkey uniquely valuable: its customs union with the European Union. Understanding why China's Turkish manufacturing base poses such challenges for European trade policy requires grasping one crucial detail. Turkey maintains a customs union agreement with the European Union. Under this arrangement, products manufactured on Turkish soil can enter European markets without facing the tariffs imposed on goods produced elsewhere. This creates an elegant solution to China's European market access problem. When the EU imposed escalating tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, 17.4% on Geely, 20% on SAIC, and a crushing 38.1% on BYD, these measures dramatically increased the final price European consumers would pay for Chinese vehicles. Consider BYD's economics. Even before European tariffs, vehicles sold in Europe carried higher prices than identical models in China, reflecting transportation costs, compliance with different regulatory standards, marketing expenses, and distribution networks. The tariffs added another substantial layer of cost, potentially pricing Chinese vehicles out of competitive range against established European brands. Manufacturing in Turkey eliminates this disadvantage entirely. Vehicles produced at BYD's Manisa facility would be considered Turkish products under the customs union, entering European markets tariff-free. The cost advantages that made Chinese electric vehicles competitive in the first place — efficient manufacturing, scaled battery production, integrated supply chains — would be preserved, while the punitive tariffs intended to neutralize those advantages would simply not apply. From a strategic perspective, this represents a complete circumvention of European protectionist measures. The very barriers erected to shield European manufacturers become irrelevant when Chinese companies operate from within the privileged trading zone. The situation places European policymakers in an uncomfortable position. The tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles weren't arbitrary. They reflected genuine concerns about industrial policy and economic security. European officials worried that Chinese manufacturers, supported by substantial government subsidies, could flood European markets with underpriced vehicles, undercutting domestic producers who didn't receive comparable support. The fear wasn't simply about fair competition. It was about the potential hollowing out of a cornerstone industry that employs millions across the continent and represents generations of engineering excellence and manufacturing tradition. In 2022, China exported approximately 680,000 new energy vehicles to Europe, already representing a staggering 99.7% penetration of the European market in that category. By 2023, that number had exploded to 1.2 million units, a 77.6% year-over-year increase that confirmed Europe's worst fears about accelerating Chinese market dominance. France, leading a coalition of concerned member states, pushed for the tariff increases implemented in June, arguing that without defensive measures, European automotive manufacturing faced existential threats. The tariffs were designed to make Chinese vehicles less price competitive, protecting market share for domestic manufacturers while they developed their own competitive electric vehicle offerings. But trade barriers only work when they're comprehensive. Turkey's customs union creates a massive loophole that undermines the entire protective framework. If Chinese manufacturers can simply relocate production to Turkey and maintain tariff-free access, the defensive measures accomplish nothing beyond encouraging Chinese companies to invest in manufacturing capacity closer to European consumers, arguably making them more formidable competitors, not less. The irony is profound. Policies intended to protect European industry may inadvertently accelerate exactly the outcome they were designed to prevent: Chinese dominance of European automotive markets. BYD's broader strategy is, well, a fascinating case study in global business maneuvering. Turkey represents just one element of BYD's comprehensive global expansion blueprint. As early as 2017, the company established an electric bus production facility in Hungary, gaining direct manufacturing presence within the European Union itself. This facility focused on commercial vehicles, a segment where Chinese manufacturers could demonstrate technological capability while facing less entrenched brand loyalty than in passenger vehicles. Beyond Europe, BYD has pursued opportunities across multiple continents. The company acquired a former Ford manufacturing plant in Brazil, repurposing it for electric vehicle production and securing a foothold in South America's largest economy. In Mexico, BYD has actively searched for sites to establish new production facilities, recognizing Mexico's advantages as a manufacturing base with preferential trade access to North American markets. This pattern reveals sophisticated strategic thinking. Rather than relying solely on exports from Chinese factories, vulnerable to tariffs, trade disputes, and shifting political winds, BYD is building a truly global manufacturing footprint. Production facilities in Hungary, Turkey, Brazil, and potentially Mexico position the company to serve regional markets while navigating trade barriers that might otherwise restrict access. Each facility represents not just manufacturing capacity, but also deeper integration into local economies. When BYD employs thousands of Hungarian, Turkish, Brazilian, or Mexican workers, when it sources components from local suppliers, when it pays taxes to local governments, it becomes more difficult for politicians to characterize the company as a foreign threat. It begins to transform into a local employer and economic stakeholder. This strategy mirrors what Japanese and Korean automotive manufacturers executed decades earlier, establishing production facilities in North America and Europe to overcome trade barriers and anti-import sentiment. BYD is following a proven playbook adapted for the electric vehicle era. The Turkey-BYD partnership illuminates several trends that extend far beyond a single factory, or even the automotive sector. First, it demonstrates the limitations of tariffs as protective measures in an economically integrated world. When companies can relatively easily relocate production to circumvent trade barriers, those barriers lose effectiveness while potentially creating unintended consequences. Europe's automotive tariffs, designed to protect domestic manufacturers, may instead accelerate Chinese manufacturers' physical presence within or adjacent to European markets. Second, it highlights how middle-power nations like Turkey can leverage their strategic position. Turkey's customs union with Europe, combined with its need for industrial development and employment, made it an ideal partner for Chinese manufacturers seeking European market access. Ankara skillfully negotiated investments that served Turkish economic development goals while providing Chinese companies what they need. This represents the kind of strategic economic diplomacy that can deliver substantial benefits to nations willing to position themselves as bridges between larger economic blocs. Third, it underscores the remarkable speed and adaptability of Chinese manufacturing enterprises. Just decades removed from producing vehicles dismissed as inferior, Chinese companies now compete at the technological frontier of automotive development. They've not only matched established manufacturers in electric vehicle technology, but in many respects surpassed them, while simultaneously demonstrating sophisticated global strategic thinking. Fourth, it reveals how the transition to electric vehicles has disrupted traditional automotive hierarchies. Legacy manufacturers built their dominance on generations of refinement in internal combustion technology, expertise that becomes less relevant as the industry pivots to electric drivetrains and software-defined vehicles. Chinese manufacturers, unburdened by legacy systems and existing investments, could focus entirely on the technologies that would define the future. Looking forward, several questions remain unanswered. Will European manufacturers successfully develop competitive electric vehicle offerings that can match Chinese products on technology, price, and quality? Can European policymakers develop more effective approaches to supporting domestic industry that don't simply encourage Chinese manufacturers to relocate production? Will consumers ultimately care about a vehicle's country of origin if Chinese brands can deliver superior value? What seems increasingly clear is that restricting Chinese automotive manufacturers through tariffs alone will prove insufficient. BYD's Turkish facility demonstrates that determined companies with strong technical capabilities and ample resources can find pathways around trade barriers. For BYD and other Chinese manufacturers, the momentum appears unstoppable. Even if the United States and Europe implement maximum tariffs, these companies have shown willingness and ability to establish local production facilities that eliminate the tariff disadvantage entirely. Each new factory strengthens their global presence, deepens their integration into local economies, and positions them to serve regional markets more effectively. The automotive industry's center of gravity is shifting. For over a century, that center resided in Detroit, Stuttgart, and Tokyo. Increasingly, it's moving to Shenzhen, Shanghai, and other Chinese manufacturing hubs. The BYD-Turkey partnership represents one visible manifestation of this broader transformation. A transformation that will reshape not just where vehicles are made, but the entire economic and geopolitical landscape surrounding one of humanity's most significant industries. The rapid reversal of Turkey's position on Chinese vehicle imports, from punitive tariffs to billion-dollar partnerships in mere weeks, initially appeared puzzling. But understanding the strategic logic reveals a carefully orchestrated arrangement that serves multiple parties' interests while potentially undermining European trade policy. For Turkey, Chinese automotive investment brings desperately needed jobs, technology transfer, and economic growth. For BYD, Turkish production facilities provide tariff-free access to European markets while circumventing protectionist barriers. For Europe, the situation presents a complex challenge: defensive trade measures that inadvertently encourage exactly the outcome they were designed to prevent. This episode illustrates a fundamental truth about 21st century economics. In a deeply integrated global trading system, economic walls rarely work as intended. Capital, technology, and production can flow to wherever regulations and economics align most favorably. Companies with global ambitions and substantial resources will find pathways through barriers, around restrictions, and into markets regardless of political obstacles. The question facing European automotive manufacturers isn't whether they can stop Chinese competition through tariffs and trade barriers. The Turkey-BYD partnership demonstrates that approach's limitations. The question is whether they can innovate fast enough, manufacture efficiently enough, and deliver compelling enough products to compete with Chinese manufacturers on merit. That's a far more difficult challenge, but it's the only one that truly matters. The future of the automotive industry won't be determined by customs regulations or tariff schedules. It will be decided by which companies best serve consumers' needs with superior technology, competitive pricing, and compelling products. As this transformation accelerates, one thing becomes certain. The automotive landscape 20 years from now will look radically different from the one we've known. Chinese manufacturers like BYD aren't just entering the global market, they're reshaping it entirely. And strategic moves like the Turkish manufacturing facility demonstrate that they're playing a sophisticated long game that extends far beyond any single market or quarter's sales figures. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and activate notifications so you don't miss our continuing coverage of how global economic forces are reshaping industries, nations, and our collective future.